Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this Met webinar. I'm Tim Green. I am the director for Met. And today's session will review the 10 commandments, actually the 13 commandments of digital identity wallets. Now, as we all know, there's a huge amount of tech under the hood of a digital wallet, and it's critical to get this right. But there's another equally important consideration, and that's ultimately you have to make a wallet that people will want to install and actually use, and that means great design. So how do we get all of this right? Well, today's guest knows more about this than most, and he's John Sharma. He's the director of the Global Trust Association, which is an independent not-for-profit foundation whose mission is to move the global identity and trust community towards a stronger and more informed market. You could probably guess that I read that off their website. John, welcome, and thanks for joining today. Tell us a little bit more about you and about the work of the Global Trust Association.
Right. My name's John Sharma. I've been in the identity business for about 25 years now, right from the very early days. And as it's evolved, we've seen many changes. Um, Obviously, EIDAS was one of the important changes. I was quite involved with that with the European Commission. And then as we progressed past that into a greater understanding of what identity is, um, I've been involved with EIDAS 2, obviously, in digital wallets within that. Um, in the past, I've worked not only with the EU, but I've spoken at the UN on digital identity for reducing child slavery, and I've spoken to the Council of Ministers with regards to EIDAS generally to get their on board, them being on board for this. I currently my work at digital at the sorry. Currently, my work at the Global Trust Foundation uh, concerns the use of digital wallets and trust services in the ecosystem, and actually to move into a digital wallet society. We want to make a society that isn't just the EUDI wallet, isn't just the European Digital Identity Wallet, but a society founded on digital wallets. Uh, it's the new paradigm of understanding what identity is. Identity is very much now seen as not just an individual person, but the holistic view of that person with regards to his credentials, his skills, and any other attributes. Uh, some soft, some verifiable, but all of those which will enable the citizen and the individual to be assert his identity as and when he needs. So that's my background, and we continue. The Global Trust Foundation pushes that forward and brings that globally, and we will work on that globally into the future.
Brilliant. Okay, well, you're working with lawmakers and wallet providers all over the world, so you're a great guide to today's topic. Now, it's come about because I was reading your blog, which has some great articles on it, and nicely written with nice titles. And I came across this title about the 13 Commandments. So it's great. It's a great guide. There's, even the most tech-minded people want clear guidance on how to create and launch wallets. So we've got these 13 commandments, and let's just go through them. So the first one, is simple functionality. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, one has to remember that a digital identity wallet has to be used, and it needs to be easily available. So we need to have it as intuitive, as simple as possible. And in fact, as simple as things like the Apple Wallet and the Google Wallet that exist now, but in a very, very more restricted domain. You must be able to install it, must be able to set it up, must be able to load credentials into it, all with minimal user input and also minimal delays. It should integrate smoothly. It should integrate smoothly with other applications, and so users can use it to assert their digital identity, their credentials across any platform that they want to be, and anything that they're doing in life. And that's the functionality that needs to be remembered and recalled whenever you're building these things. And you need it to streamline people's lives. That's one of the important things about digital wallets.
Okay, great. Well, number two is just the very critical part of this whole process, and that's trustworthiness. Um, the public and all sorts of people are concerned about this dimension of digital wallets. So, tell us your thoughts on that.
Trust is key. If you don't trust your wallet, if you don't trust the contents in the wallet, it's absolutely useless. For individuals, for the citizens, even more so the businesses, but in particular the 500 million European citizens that there are, you do want to be able to trust that wallet and not have individuals say, well, what happens if I don't trust it, what happens if somebody uses it for, etc., etc. So just like you need to trust your credit cards, and people have learned to trust credit cards to an extent, there always will be some that don't. Credit cards and also payment cards are trusted, and therefore this has to be of a similar level of trust. You don't think about whether MasterCard is going to get it wrong, really, mechanically or technically. You don't think that Visa is going to sell your secrets to the Dark Lord. You're planning to trust it, and you use it there as a measure of you part of your life. And you also trust them to look after you when things go wrong. So if something does go wrong, and things never can always go right every time, whether there's a fault with the transaction, maybe at the vendor end, or something is done wrong, you need to be able to have the trust that they will take your side. That, like with a credit card, why do I use a credit card? I use a credit card because if I buy something and it's no good, my gripe is not with the company that sold it to me. I go back to the credit card company and said, I bought it through you. Can I have my money back? It's obviously faulty or whatever. And you can then deal with the vendor to deal with that. And that measure of liability is different to working directly between you and a third party. So it's important that that interaction and that liability is understood, and also that the identities and truths of the transaction are assured within that transaction and within the wallet environment. So you need to trust all aspects of the wallet to be correct, or if they can't be correct for some obscure, strange reason, that they are rectifiable. Now, that is what I would call trust. So you don't have to worry. If something goes wrong, they always go wrong, you will not have to worry about the wallet or the wallet provider not being on your side. And that measure of trust is the only way to ensure that users have a high take up, and there's a high take up of this within the community.
I imagine you need. There's also an element of transparency there, so that you know the counterparties you're dealing with.
Yeah,
That's linked to it, isn't it?
absolutely. Identity of counterparties, the truths of what they're saying, because in reality, it's the wallet provider that is actually doing the checks. If you're a registered vendor, if you're or a relying party or whatever out within the transaction, if you're registered, then that means that you've been checked. So the whole idea is that you want to be able to have the equivalent of a um, trust mark, I say, but it's not quite that, because it will be implicit in the transactions that you're doing. There are ways of changing that trust, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, because there may be instances where you don't want the transparency, where you don't want the identities, and those are exceptionals rather than the full case. But you're absolutely right. It's all aspects of the transaction. I like to know about it, and I like to know that if there is something wrong, I'd covered. It's not on me.
Okay, so turning to number 3 command, and just kind of link to the first one really. The first one was about functionality, and this one's about a versatile user experience. So describe what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's really the universality of use. It's you want to be able to use it for everything that you're doing in everyday life. So I want to be able to send credentials, give a credential. I want to prove who I am, which is a common one, of course. Proving my age to buy a bottle of wine. You know, if I'm over 70, they don't want to sell me a bottle of wine because so there's a it's important to be able to cover all of these issues, and also then, of course, as I said, buffer the user in case there is some issue with that transfer of information. Um, I want to know the identities of the counterparties. I want to handle all the tasks with ease between myself and the counterparties and whoever I'm dealing with. I want to be able to give digital tickets. I want to buy tickets. I want to sell, or even have a small market offer tickets to somebody else. I want to share tickets. I want to use my wallet in any way I want to, as well, as long as it's trustworthy and legal. I want to have we'll come back to that in a moment, but I want to be able to exchange data, and it needn't be a transaction for money, of course. I may want to share some data with a friend of mine. I may want to do any transaction that I would normally do. I'd want to do it using my wallet because, number one, I have a much uh, closer link with the counterparty. Number two, it's confidential and it's can be encrypted, and it's very much can be very much a one-to-one transaction rather than going into a void and then not knowing whether it's coming out the other side, emails and all that sort of thing. There's always this gap. I don't trust emails. This is very much more personal. It's like going up and speaking to somebody face to face almost. And um, it's important that no matter what I want to do in the future as well, it's also got to be able to cope with that. So there's got to be a measure of future proofing of the wallet so that that wallet will work for me in the future. I don't want to have to change wallets a lot because uh, too much like hard work generally. And I don't want to, truthfully, I don't have more than 2 wallets. I usually have one wallet. Most people have one wallet. They put cards in, they put whatever they want into their leather wallet. Uh, so I don't want to have more than one wallet with regards to my digital persona and my digital activities. Uh, I may want to, if I'm wish to have some transactions as confidential, but or perhaps anonymous, but that should be able to be coped within the wallet, within one wallet, and have that option. Do you want to make this transaction anonymous or not? And if you can do that, then you've got one wallet. It's not confusing. Once you have more than one, at the most 2 wallets, it gets confusing for the average person. Remember, we're not talking about nerds like everybody, I guess, that's listening to this webcast. It's more to do with uh, people in the street. In English, they say the man on the Clapham omnibus. And that's exactly it. The average person sitting on the bus that you see, you go along, has got no clue what wallets are, has got no clue what confidentiality or cryptography is. They just want to do it safely, and they want to keep one wallet because more than that, and they get confused And truthfully, I get confused as well. They all get confused. So it's very important that as new functionalities emerge, they're incorporated. So tomorrow there may be a new uh, function or a new application or a new uh, activity that I'm doing. I'd like to incorporate that. So rather like saying, oh, suddenly the government puts in another um, um, COVID pass or something. It's got to cope with every contingency that there is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, having, having written about mobile since the pre-smartphone. There was a time about 10 years ago when everyone got quite excited about wallets, when the Google and the Apple Wallet first emerged, and there was this feeling that they could become really central to the mobile experience. And, I'd say 10 years later, apart from people who use their Pay and Google Pay and occasionally, uh, boarding pass there, they don't really get used very much, and so we're on the cusp of something now, and it does feel like we have to get this user experience to tip it to that stage. But anyway, let's move on to number 4, which is automation. So
This is more an aspiration on my part because life is not always very simple. And even for the average person, as I said, on the Clapham Omnibus, they may need to do things sometimes a little bit more complex than just a simple transaction. There could be transactions. What I mean, automation, it's like a little workflow. If this happens, do that. Very, very simple. And there are lots of software programs around. If this, then that. And in reality, that's what I think there should be. But maybe there's the potential to do it more complicated. But it's important that it is very simple to do. So there's a number of ways of doing it. And you can imagine businesses and SMEs using this even more than citizens, because they will want to have to pay a transaction. I will pay this transaction when I receive this goods, or I will do this, or I can do that, or I'll pay you in 30 days. And there's a proof of that transaction. But there are a number of ways of doing it. You can do it actually just write it out in the application, in the wallet. And that's complicated. It's impractical doing it on a mobile phone. And also it's probably not very functional if you are using a wallet and you're doing large complex workflows or more than one workflow, storing them and all the rest. How do they get stored? So I'm a firm believer in saying, right, get a small little off wallet application that you can stick onto your computer. You can use templates, predefined templates. You can make your own. You can convert templates and convert skeleton applications to make a little workflow, and then it's just fill in recipient here. When it goes, so you take one, you can then transfer that workflow in coded form, so it doesn't have to be in full English, onto the wallet, and then it's literally fill in recipient or fill in conditions. And that, for me, it will make a big positive contribution, especially in the business world, because here you're adding something that you can't normally get in normal transactions. It's all about adding things and making things better than they are already. And automation and this workflow type technology will make it very much simpler for people to do things, especially for their templates beforehand. And from a government point of view and from a uh, business point of view, you can build quite a complex workflow that you give to your customers or that you can use with your customers. For example, you can offer it to your customers. You buy a car from us. This is a workflow that you will need. You'll need an insurance. You'll need road tax. You'll need this. You'll need that. And all those little features can be in one little workflow. And you say, we make it easy for you. Here's the car. Just load up. We'll give you this little process and it'll walk you through it. You don't have to worry about the processes. In fact, uh, there are workflows like that already in other countries, but they are um, far more connected than we would like in our GDPR environment. But I've seen it where you can buy a car from for a secondhand car from a dealer, and within 3 steps, 3 touch points, you can park the car in downtown in a car park. Everything in between, testing, tax, insurance, everything done. That makes life easy, and that's added value. And that's what we really want to do. And that's my vision of automation.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose a lot of businesses would do that kind of stuff inside Excel spreadsheets at the moment, and they can just consolidate all this inside the wallet where the payment experience happens as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to 5, which is kind of revisiting the trust idea, and this is confidentiality and privacy.
Yeah, it's a little bit like trust, but it's to do with the fact that quite often people don't want other people to know what they're doing. It's sometimes irrational, it's sometimes rational, it's sometimes difficult to look at and say, this is the way it should be done. But nonetheless, people do want confidentiality. And occasionally they may not, and I'll speak a little bit later about auditability. But confidentiality, I don't want people to know my business. And if you take that as a starting point, you can always offer insights into what you're doing, but the start off must be confidential. It's got to be safeguarding data within the wallet so that there's no traceable footprint. Ideally, I want to be able to transact with you and have no footprint left afterwards. It's not always possible to do that, because if you're looking for audit trails, it will say later, you do need to have some measure of traceability. But putting that on one side, I don't want anybody to track my actions. I don't want people to see what I'm doing or what I'm doing unless there is explicit consent. And that's important. There's got to be explicit consent to withdraw partial or all of confidentiality. Now, this can come about in various different ways. The commonest way within digital wallets is partial disclosure, which means that I'm not going to disclose my full address and details in a transaction to order a box of detergent online. I don't need to do it. I just need to have my address, my personal details, or in that case, you would need the address. But you understand. You don't need to know my phone number. You don't need to know other information. And so I have just a minimal amount of data. Minimum disclosure is an understood concept. It can be used in extreme case, for example, going to buy some liquor from a store, where you would just say you've got to prove that you're over 18. Or you may wish in certain circumstances to present an attribute like your driving license, your permit to drive, to a law enforcement officer. Maybe not a police officer, but a law enforcement officer, let's say a traffic warden. You may want to just show him that you own the car.
Yeah, right.
For example, is this your car, sir? Yes, it is. Here's my proof. It's not my name. It's not anything. I own this car. Very important. That would actually make police officers' jobs a lot easier if there's that strata, which is that privacy retaining. So there's a lot of information that is given extraneously, information that isn't needed to be shared. So that principle, which we all know about, should be carried through into the wallet as much as possible, unless there's explicit reasons not to. And it has to be an opt out, not an opt in, just because it's easier that way and better and safer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been reading earlier today about the Australian ban on kids using social media. And there's all these reports about how flawed the system for identifying kids is, and that they're using facial recognition software to sort of estimate the age of kids. And these 16-year-olds are being told that they look like they're 30, and vice versa. So, but if we all had like this, confidential identity thing, it would just be a yes, no, are you over 18 or not? It would solve a lot of these problems.
Yes, of course you are. Sorry, in that particular case, you would need to have a biometric to check that's the holder of the device. But that notwithstanding, it would be nicer, because these estimations are exactly that, and they are not only. And I'm sorry to all the biometrics people in the room, but don't. You have problems with it. You have problems with profiling. You have problems with the algorithms profiling, saying
Yeah.
they are better working with some groups than others, etc., etc. So it's important.
But as we all know, there's a big difference between verifying somebody's devices linked to their face, their specific face, other forms of biometrics authentication where you kind of guess someone's age or identify someone in the street. They're different things, as we all know. Anyway, so let's move on to the next one. Very obvious one: affordability and cost.
Yeah, well, we all want it for nothing. We want everything for nothing, of course. Uh, from a citizen point of view, where we're looking for massive uptake, the base cost should be zero. I think that's pretty much understood. The governments are going to be issuing free wallets, digital identity wallets, the UDI wallet in the UK, in Europe. So at the very base level, there should be no cost to the user. There should be, at the base level, the relying party would probably be the one that makes the savings, because you want to raise funds from the ones that make savings, that have benefits. So from tangible benefits, which are monetizable. So relying parties are probably likely to be the ones that do the funding. However, that doesn't mean to say that business wallets are the same. And I'll come to the issue of regulatory issues and governance issues around here. In fact, we don't have a separate issue on governance, so I'll talk about it here. There needs to be the ability to be able to say, right, the liability in this transaction needs to be increased. I want an extra safety. As a citizen, I want extra safety. I don't mind paying a penny a transaction or half a penny a transaction to have additional liability for an error in the transaction. In case the cap may be €10,000, I may want it as 20,000 or 30,000. Now that immediately gives a benefit to the relying party, to the counterparty that's selling me something or other, because they can say, we will give you extra liability. And there's the additional value that they are offering. They're paying that extra penny, and they offer additional liability. So their advertising will be, work with us and you'll have additional liability insurance. So from that point of view, cost price is important, but wallets at the moment, the digital identity wallet, the EU digital identity wallet, runs under the governance through regulation. There are set legal limits of liability of all factors in that transaction. possibly for business wallets, and that hasn't been decided yet, but for wallets in general, for the next generation of wallets or the non-EUDI wallets, the terms and conditions of the transaction can vary. Just like most people, when you buy anything online, there are commercial terms and conditions that you never read. So there should be on the wallet as well, if you so choose, outside of the governmental issues. Now, most companies in business to business transactions will insist on their own terms and conditions. And it doesn't matter what they are, as long as both counterparties agree to them. So you could say, I want to have a terms and conditions ABC, liability, payment terms, etc., etc., etc. If I agree with my counterparty, we can both digitally sign that, and we can have a copy each in our digital wallets. Now I can transact with this counterparty, and in the terms and within my transaction, it will say subject to the terms and conditions agreed, reference A, B, C, D, E. So I can immediately transact in my comfort zone, and a business can transact in its traditional comfort zone. What you don't want to do as business is to say, hold on, we're going to have to change our entire way of doing business and our entire risk profile, because risk is a cost. And how they have to deal with that is they'll offset risk. We haven't talked about risk in general, but you can offset risk as well. And that will all be done through insurance, and through the terms and conditions will frame that risk. So cost price is variable. It can be taken by the relying party. It can be taken by the user, the holder of the wallet. And out of all of that, there's going to be enough funding to pay for the individual, the service providers en route, one of which may well be a payment adjudicator, because that's something we haven't talked about, and I've not talked technically on this whole. But if you've got money flows running around, you'll need a payment adjudicator that can also cope with anonymity. So you can't. So there's a whole.
Lots of lots
Another half hour, please. Another half hour, please. And cut the serve. So
I'm gonna my challenge to you is to do maybe a minute or 2 minutes on each of the remaining commandments, because we're speeding through our allotted time. So let's see how quickly we can deal with the others. So let's go on to universal acceptance.
right. Very important. I want to have my wallet used everywhere. I don't want to have to think, can you use this wallet? Can you use that wallet? I see a MasterCard badge on the side of a shop. I just want to use it. I don't care. If I don't see that, I don't think I've ever shopped in the last few years without somebody that says we accept MasterCard or Visa. You just don't do it. So it's the same thing. There needs to be that measure of universality. It needs to be that if I have one wallet and there's another sort of wallet, it all works together. So universality also can be translated as interoperability.
Excellent. So that's
a technical thing. Next.
Yeah, so that's accessible, accepted everywhere, and now this is the next one, which is accessible everywhere, accessible to all. So tell us about that.
There's about 80% of the population will not be able to have any problems dealing with wallets with a sufficient education. There's going to be about 20%, 15 to 20% of people that will have difficulty either through lack of abilities, physical, cognitive, lack of ability. They can't be excluded. So somebody came up with a Braille digital wallet, basically. But that's very trivial. You will need to be able to have a whole variety of different ways of doing things. The the digital wallet per se in the EU is an option. You don't need to use it. If you want to have everybody to use it, you need to have optional ways of going around it. Again, in some of the more advanced countries, I've actually seen they're making an availability of people to go around to the individual's home and be able to assist them in doing transactions. If they're old, frail, cognitively impaired, physically impaired, whatever. So that's what I mean. It's got to meet everybody. Now, there is a technical issue along with that with proxy, which means that you have to be able to maybe give the permission, record that it's been done or helped by somebody else. But that's something that we can deal with technically. So that's accessibility. Next.
Okay, and next one is transferability. So we're talking about moving your wallet or your content of your wallet between devices, or in case of loss and so on.
Yeah.
That's about
I've got different sized pockets and different trousers. Therefore, my wallet has to fit different trousers and different pockets. Same thing with digital. I may have one phone, it may go tomorrow, it may fall under a bus tomorrow, it may be trodden on. For example, I may choose to change my wallet. I may choose to change my wallet provider critically. So the contents of the wallet, the equivalent of credit cards and driving license and whatever in a leather wallet, need to be able to be transferred simply, easily, and efficiently. And you need to have this as a way of doing it, copying, not necessarily, but actually not copying, moving. Copying is something else, because copying, you may not be able to copy all credentials. You can't copy a passport. You can move your passport, a single version of your passport. So you have to be very careful about what's being done. But having said that, that's an essential part of digital society using wallets.
And so the next one is linked, which is resilience and recovery. So I suppose we're talking there about, any loss or unexpected accident.
Yeah, resilience is very important in the sense that if something goes wrong, you want to be able to recover. More so, the resilience that I have here that I've considered are twofold. First off is there's the resilience of the network, the communication system. I don't want to rely and have my wallet stop working totally if somebody blows up a cell tower nearby me, in the case of malicious activity, or the internet breaks, in inverted commas. But those things do happen in the Western world, in everywhere, and you have failures of communications. I need to have some minimal functionality, critical functionality available offline, and or near offline if you don't have connectivity to the back office servers, to all the servers. So offline, near offline is very important. The other resilience is if something goes wrong, I lose the wallet, I lose a credential, I delete it, I do something silly, no matter how many different steps there are to prevent me doing that. I click yes, 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 no, yes, yes, and I shouldn't have done the second no or whatever, and the thing goes, whether it's a credential or whatever. What's necessary is to be able to recover that. There will be components and credentials which won't be easily recovered, like losing your passport. You can't just have a copy of it sitting around and say, "Oh, I'll have a copy of that," unless you're very lucky. So therefore, most countries, in fact, 99% of countries won't allow you to have more than one credential. passport credential. Therefore, you're going to have to recover those. But the resilience will be that if the wallet is there, it's unlikely to be damaged or be less functional than it normally is. And if there's a external problem, then that external problem is short term and doesn't impact too hard.
Okay, we're on to commandment number 11, which is it's to do with striking that balance between having sight of your previous transactions, both you and the provider of the wallet. Speak confidentiality. So tell us about that.
Yeah, auditability is a two-edged sword. Many people will say, I don't want anybody to know. We talked about confidentiality before. I don't want anybody to know that transaction. However, the majority of people, when you're doing financial transactions or transactions which are governed by some administrative process, will want to have proof that they have done that transaction, because there may be a question later on whether you actually did do it. And you want to be able to say to the counterparty, no, I did it. Look, there it is. It's something at your end, which is usually the argument that you say, right? So you need to be able to have auditability if you wish. The question with regards to auditability is whether you want to have it opt in or opt out. And if you with some transactions, you'll want to have it opt in, some you'll want to have opt out, and you need to be able to do that. Again, that may be an offer that can be made by a vendor or a lying party that will say, we're going to offer you an optional opt-in capability or an optional opt-out capability. So that's one that needs to be considered carefully, and the options need to be made available.
Okay, well, logically moving on to the next commandment, you've just talked there about some kind of audit trail, and obviously the holders of these wallets some of them will want to have access to the information their activity has proved. So that moves on to the next one, which is personal online storage dimension. So talk about that for us.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most common sense uh, laws that there are, because you will want to store some stuff offline. Your wallet isn't infinite in size. You may want to store a load of stuff, documents that you've received, invoices that you've received, not in your face all the time, but available if you need without having to go to my computer or whatever. Now, this is commonly done already by the Apples and Googles of this world. And you are actually given by Apple. I'm an Apple user. I have I think 1 gigabyte free storage on my account. I don't, whatever I'm paying for Apple for my machine or for whatever, I have a gigabyte storage free of charge. If I want to store more, and I invariably do because I like keeping audit trails and backups of my phone and everything there, and it's a place where you could store your backups, you may want more, in which case I pay a silly, stupid amount, 99 pence, which is €50 for 60 euros, euro cents per month, just for the ability for another, I don't know, 10 gigabytes or whatever. And I don't see that as something which is going to be a deal breaker for most citizens. They'll want that if they need. They'll find that they do need it, because even if my daughter needs it now, then I'm sure most average people will need to have that. It's very simple. It's very easy. It's a revenue source as well. So I think that's a very important factor to be able to do that. And then you can store stuff there. And that stuff can be confidential. It can be in an encrypted area. There are lots of different options there.
So, yeah, I mean, I think a decade of iCloud, Dropbox, and
Yeah.
various Google services have taught consumers the value of this stuff anyway. So it makes it so logical next step. So the last one.
Sorry, Tim, if I can just say that again, we're talking about the average citizen who may not have heard of Dropbox and may not have heard of those things in the past, but they are aware of Google Wallet and they are aware of uh, being able to just to push off some of their information. So it's important to know as simple and is contained, totally integrated, because Google Wallet wasn't all as Dropbox wasn't always totally integrated. Microsoft OneDrive is very integrated now, and most people may not even notice they're using it. So that's a sort of issue, and that comes down to our last point, I think, which is awareness.
Yeah.
Well, it's awareness, which is the case, but it's actually one of the important things. And if you look at the 10 Commandments or 13 Commandments, Moses was up there and he put them on a tablet and he stuck them up high so that people could see them, and they kept on seeing them. And they're probably the 10 Commandments were probably the 10 most talked about phrases in the history of the universe, as far as I'm aware. And there are reams and books and years of discussion in learned Talmudic centers and in Babylon and in Persia and in everywhere you want to think about, in Rome, about the meanings of the 10 Commandments, those 10 phrases. And that discussion is important and that awareness is important. I would imagine that whilst most people may not be able to recite the 10 Commandments offhand, they're pretty much, if you told somebody them, they wouldn't be surprised and they would have easy access to them. But they know some of the main ones: thou shalt kill, adultery, I'm sure, one God, etc. So it's important that these commandments, these 10 commandments, 13 commandments in the case of digital wallet, are actually communicated, and communicated as a fundamental part of society. So digital wallets have to be integrated into schooling all the way through society. And that's very, very important. They, proclaim from the houses and from the hills, etc., etc. Modern day term, social media, government education. You can't. The problem has been the digital identity wallets from the EU digital identity wallet, is that the education has been left to the hands of the governments, to the individual member states, who, if they don't have budget, won't do it. Therefore, there needs to be one of the fundamental laws is that you have to give awareness, and that's important so that everybody can understand it, everybody can use them, and therefore everybody can have benefit, and society will grow and change and prosper using that across all of society.
Well, that's a great way to sum it all up. In your own small part, you're doing your bit to raise awareness. I know it's behind the scenes, that's what you do, but with a bit of luck, next year we'll see some of these wallets launching across the EU, and then we'll see some of these commandments being put into practice, I hope. So, John, thank you so much for your insights today. Thanks for writing the original blog in the first place, which attracted our attention, and for coming on here to talk them through with us today. So once again, thanks very much, John. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Cheers.